Hey guys, welcome back to a new episode of Interviewing With. I'm Ashley from Are You Sure You Want to Do That? And today we are with an absolute superstar. We are with Luke Gygax. Thank you so much for being here.
It's no problem, Ashley. It's a pleasure to be here. A pleasure to talk to fellow nerds.
And first, before I get started in any of this, let me say thank you for your service and thank you for all you do for our country.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure. I kind of stumbled into military service. I decided I knew better than my parents, just like a lot of kids do when they're 18. And so I joined the Army, and I got out and ended up sending myself to college and staying in the reserves. About 10 years later, I came back to it full time. And
Wow.
believe it or not, I have almost 31 years of service now. Next month will be 31 years in the Army, and I went from an enlisted soldier through OCS, and I'm now a lieutenant colonel and brigade executive officer for a sustainment brigade. So it's kind of a weird path, but something I've done almost as long as gaming.
That's amazing. Um, so we're gonna have to talk a little bit about gaming, of course.
Yeah.
The first thing I do want to know a little bit about what got GaryCon started.
Okay, so GaryCon's a convention I organize in March of every year, and I hold it in my hometown where I grew up, which is Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And that's also where Dungeons and Dragons was written, and the company TSR, which published it, was founded by my father. So in 1974, D&D was published from the company that he started. And it was headquartered there until Wizards of the Coast bought Dungeons and Dragons many years later and took it out to Seattle. So that's kind of the home of Dungeons and Dragons. So it makes sense to have that there where my father lived his entire life since he was 8 years old.
Wow.
So GaryCon came out of a sad event. My father passed away in March 4th of 2008, and it's just if anyone is a lost parent, I'm sure they know that feeling how life changes. It's so if your parents are alive, give them a hug, call them, tell them you love them. Make sure you do that as much as you can while you have that time available. But I do this. GaryCon grew out of a wake that we had. So many people came to Lake Geneva. Hundreds of people messaged us or emailed to say how much my father meant to them, even though they didn't know him personally. They felt like he was an important influence in their life. So for those people who actually physically showed up, as well as friends and family, we got together at the American Legion Hall, which is a place that was fond in my heart because I remember many early conventions like Gen Con, I think Gen Con 2 or 3 was held there, as well as several smaller conventions when I was a boy, like Winter Fantasy and Autumn Revel and things like that. So we played games, we watched the D&D cartoon and the Futurama episode, and people could tell stories about my dad if they wanted to share with the group a little podium and stuff. And we had food and drink, and it was a good time. And I believe it was Harold Johnson, who is an early TSR employee and designer. He said, "Hey, Luke, this is really fun. You should do it again next year." And Jolly Blackburn overheard him, and he said, "Yeah, you can call it GaryCon." At the time, I didn't know that GaryCon was a convention in their world. The Knights of the Dinner Table, Jolly Blackburn created that comic strip. It's still going today. And they have a character called Gary Jackson. That's kind of a combination of my dad, Gary Gygax, and Steve Jackson, another important designer from the early years. And so I said, sure, okay, I'll call it GaryCon. And I figured I would spend a couple $1,000s each year and hold a convention, a gathering, like a game day. And that first, I didn't plan any games. I didn't have a website. I just said, hey, show up if you want to. And about 175 people showed up the first
Wow.
year, and it was a blast. So I said, okay, I guess we'll do it again. The next year it was 240 people and 400, 500. And the last time we could have a convention, which was a physical gathering, was in 2019. And we had almost 3,000 people there, like 2,850, something like that. So, which is big for
That's
Lake Geneva. Lake
amazing.
Geneva has about 6,000 people. So it is, a huge convention for the area.
That is amazing. Um, I gotta know, what was it like growing up with the father of role-playing games? Was he like
Yeah.
constantly throwing ideas at you, and what was that
Yeah.
like?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've gotten that question a fair amount throughout life. And for me, I kind of was like, well, I don't know. It felt normal, right? Because this is my
Right?
dad.
It's your dad.
This is what we did. And so my earliest memories are of playing games. I played D&D since I was 4. Now, playing D&D, I was rolling the dice and, probably throwing out some, wild ideas, but I was participating at the table. It was just how I, remembered. And I ran, a DM for my sisters, when I was 7 or 8 or something. So I've always done that. But yes, a lot of the free time that I would spend, or a lot of the time I'd spend with my dad, since he was a creative, he didn't have, he was always had to work, right? He's always working. So I'd go in after school and sit in his office and look through what he'd typewritten recently, and then, ask him questions about it, and maybe play test stuff in the evening, or we'd play games, or we'd play he loved railroad games, so we play Rail Baron was a popular family game, Empire Builder. We do that. Ticket to Ride later in life. He enjoyed playing Ticket to Ride because he always loved trains. He's a he was born in 1938, so trains were a much bigger piece of Americana, and so he loved that stuff. But he also played cribbage, poker, um, chess, shogi, go. So there's, we're always playing games. That's what we do. I think uh, we bought a house in a new house one time. It was a big deal. My family was very poor. Then he got some money. We were able to buy a house, but it was neat because it was a big yard and there was an old lawnmower that came with the house, like a riding lawnmower. But we purchased a new one, so uh, we took them out. And we raced the old one versus the new one around the circular driveway, and just stuff like that. We're always making games out of things and talking about things and imagining how something would be a stat, or when you see something in nature, how could you apply it to the game, a gameplay or scenario. So yeah, that just, I guess I didn't really realize it, but from talking to other people, um, they're like, you grew up being a designer, more or less. You've been in the creative process since you were very young, and you kind of intuitively uh, understand the creative process.
Absolutely. Do you think when your dad and the rest of the TSR group um, created D&D,
Mhm.
do you think they expected D&D to influence as many people as it has?
No, not at all. I don't think they knew that it would have such. I mean, gosh, for a game to have legs almost 50 years later, that's pretty amazing, right? So it created a whole new genre of gaming. It turned that dynamic around. So if people who are watching are maybe a little younger and didn't think about it, Dungeons and Dragons was the first role-playing game. So prior to the game of Dungeons and Dragons, most games were uh, con- um, they were competitions. You'd have a winner and a loser. You were trying to defeat uh, another person or other people.
Hmm.
The game was typically set on a board or a map, so that it was confined space of where that would happen, and you couldn't decide to go off of the board and do something else. If you're on a Monopoly board, you can't say, "Well, I want to go someplace else." They're like, "No, you got to go around the Monopoly board in this set order." And the games were uh, uh, typically, I don't know of games that would continue. You again for the Monopoly instance, you wouldn't play a game of Monopoly and then say, okay, where were we? Let's save this all and let's keep going. And we're gonna, when someone reaches a victory condition, that's it. You close it up, and the next time you open it, you go to start over again. So Dungeons and Dragons is a cooperative game where there's no set board. You may have you may have a map or a scenario where you design out an area where you're playing, but the players can decide to turn right on that road instead of left, and where you want them to go, or straight, or not take the road at all and cut across, and you have to make it up. So the imagination is your only limits on that. And of course, it is a series. It's a game like um, uh, you carry your skills, and develop your character and a story arc from session to session in advance. So those are all people probably like, no kidding, Luke, duh, hello. But these were revolutionary concepts at the time. It's everywhere now, but that did not exist prior to that. If you think about a simple comparison, if you look at like a sitcom from Leave It to Beaver, or even Three's Company or
Mhm.
something like that. You can watch any of those sitcoms. You don't ever have to have seen the series before, right? They're not connected.
Mhm.
But if you watch even sitcoms nowadays, there's typically more of a story arc in there,
Mhm.
so there's more of a dramatic development. So that's kind of the comparison. You're just watching any you could pick any sitcom, any Three's Company or Leave It to Beaver, and you'd watch it, and it's a standalone. They're not interconnected. There's not character development. There's none of those things. Whereas D&D is more like a drama where things develop. So just trying to give some examples of the difference so that people can understand it better.
It absolutely can become a drama, that's for sure.
Yeah, it can, and people. The reason it impacts so many people is uh, you play it. Typically, players discover it at a younger age, although you could discover Dungeons and Dragons at any age and enjoy
Mhm.
it. But I think it really gives young people a chance to figure out and test various skill sets, personality types, strategies um, to help you understand who you are, what works, what doesn't, build your confidence.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of people who are shy are able to play a character who's maybe, oh, maybe I'm the barbarian, and I'm going to confront stuff, and I'm going to empower myself to do things. So there's that benefit. If you're a dungeon master, well, okay, anybody, if you're even a player, you're trying to convince your fellow uh, gamers to do what you want to do. So it's small group dynamics, persuasive speech, problem solving. Besides the reading and the math and the things like that are a little bit more obvious. But as a DM, man, you are really having to analyze your audience. What's going to motivate each one of these people? How are you're going to learn how to design a story and have the character that that enemy. It's always, isn't it more satisfying as a player when you finally get that enemy who's dogged you like and gotten away at
Mhm.
like different points, and you're like, oh, I want to get it, and you finally wrapped up. So you learn those dramatic points, and people who are good at that or who find out that they enjoy that at a young age, they they discover that they like creative things like being a writer, director, actor, things like that. So, uh, like Joe Manganiello, definitely, uh, he thought he loved playing D&D in high school. If I remember what he was saying, they found out, oh wait, there's a job where I can basically do this and get paid in acting, and so he knew, he's like, that's what I'm doing, and he loved that sort of stuff. So people found this their love through Dungeons and Dragons, as well as simply, those are some extreme cases, but the rest of us just probably found friends that we stay in touch with for decades. I still talk to lots of the guys that I played D&D with in Germany when I was 19 years old.
Oh, it's amazing. I played it 2 years ago going on,
Mm-hmm.
and here I am.
Yeah,
I love it. It
well,
was the
exactly.
dice.
Oh, you like the polyhedral dice? Yeah, those didn't polyhedral dice. I'm polyhedrons existed, and I believe multiple shaped dice throughout history probably had been used, if I remember correctly, in some fashion, but they weren't common like they are today. And at first, they would have to use like either cards or put chips in a bag, like a dice bag, but not a cool dice bag like this, like a Crown Royal bag, and you uh, dig in and pull out a piece of cardboard or paper that would have a number on it, and that's how you randomly generated numbers. Rolling dice is much more fun.
It's,
Uh,
it's so much
but yeah,
fun.
yeah, my dad was an insurance underwriter prior to uh, he got fired, and prior to being a shoe repairman, right before I was born, he was. It's a great story. If you haven't read the book Empire of Imagination and you're curious about my dad's life, that it would be a good place to start. Empire of Imagination. It's on audiobooks. The author is Michael Whitwer, a friend of mine. Um, it would be interesting, but there were some reasons he was let go as an insurance underwriter, but he understood actuarial tables and probability, so he didn't want to. He knew that six-sided dice would only give you a certain type of bell curve, so he wanted different types of curves and probabilities for different skill sets and stuff. So
That is just the coolest thing I think I've ever heard. I'm absolutely just loving this. Um, Do you have a favorite D&D memory? It could be with your dad. It could be with. It could even be here recently. It could be with
Yeah.
your girls. Um,
Oh yeah.
do
Oh well,
you?
yeah. There's lots of good D&D memories. So let's see. If it's one with my dad, it would be just the joy I felt, or I guess it'd be the involvement that I had playing. I was playing Melf, which was one of my main characters that I played with my dad as a you know 12 to 14-year old. No, he was like probably 10 to 14-year-old. Uh, but I was going through Camp. I was playtesting the Lost Caverns of Camp, which is probably my favorite module. And I was solo adventuring through there with just my henchman, a non-player character that was with me. And I was fighting a Gorgamira, and it had breathed its fiery breath on me, and I failed the saving throw. And so in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, if you failed the saving throw, you had to roll for all of the items that were on your sheet to see if they were destroyed by magical fire, right? So in the Dungeon
Mm.
Master's Guide or in the DMG screen, there's saving throws for those. So I had a displacer cloak that I'd gotten out of Castle Greyhawk, which was a fantastic item. So for those of you who don't know, displacer cloak makes you appear to be a couple feet away from where you actually are. So any directed attacks that go against you, the first time they go against you, miss. So it's just a fantastic, automatically miss the first round, and then it gives you an armor class bonus of 2. So it was just a fantastic magic item. And my dad was a stingy DM, so you didn't get that much magic. So it burned, it fell off, and I was so mad. So I was down to 9 hit points fighting this thing, 9 or 7. I think it was 9 hit points. So really, one good hit from it, and I'd be done. And there was no one there. If I died, that's it. There'd be no way I could be, rescued. Now, Melf's an elf as well, so you can't be resurrected as an elf. So then in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, resurrect does not work on elves. So it was like the stakes were big, and I went back about 5 or 6 melee rounds back and forth. We were fighting each other, and neither one of us hit. And finally, I think I had to hit it twice and took the Gorgamir down. Just a sense of like victory and like I wasn't good. I was very determined. I don't know, it was just a dramatic moment for me. And then every time I'd go through that room, those of you who haven't played Camp, I don't want spoiler. I don't think it's a spoiler alert, but you're there you have to find a room. You have to get to a central room in the caverns of Camp, and there's 7 different doors. And every time you get to one of the doors, I believe it's 7. It's been 30 years or more since I've played this thing or looked at it. But there's several doors in the middle, and every time you go to a door and try to open it, you get teleported randomly around the cavern. So part of the old school mentality was finding where you were in a dungeon or having maps, and then that was like part of the puzzle solving, is mapping, seeing what was where and maybe where hidden rooms would be or likely things like that. So that was part of it. But I would have to map, and as I'm going, trying to figure out where I am, because you don't know, you get turned, you don't know which way is north, none of that. But whenever I found the room, he's like, "Oh yeah, and it's this kind of a room, and there's a pile of displacer cloak ashes and elven tears." I was like, "Okay, now I know where I'm at. I'm here." So that's just a memory of playing with my dad. So that's more personal. For playing with my girls, kind of a funny moment with them is I think they're first level, and I was just giving them. I just started their 5e game. Sabrina is a bugbear ranger. So yeah, so I just said, hey, I need to learn 5e a little better. So I opened up D&D Beyond. I took off all the filters, said allow everything, whatever, it doesn't matter. And I just read through. I said, what do you want to be? And she's like, oh, bugbear sounds cool. I guess maybe like a teddy bear. I don't know, bugbear sounds cool. So she didn't know what it looked like or anything, but she's a bugbear ranger. And the other one, Mira, my middle daughter, is she's a dragon princess. So she's a sorcerer who's an elf, and I forgot what her name is, which is terrible. I have to look up. I can't believe that. Drew a blank there, and then now I'm going to draw a blank for Miriam too, and I can't see. Now I'm just nervous. She's a Minotaur Paladin.
Ooh.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, so we got a Minotaur Paladin, a Bugbear Ranger, and an Elven sorcerer, and their first level. And I gave them an adventure where they need to go check on somebody, and he's out at this farmstead or whatever it is. He was talking to an old relative, whatever it is, and they go out there and I have these goblins attacking, of course, right? And I think they killed some sheep or something out there. They're like, oh no, they killed the sheep. Oh my god, are the sheep okay? I was like, okay. all right, I got to remember these are little girls. I better like, oh, the sheep is going to be all right. I think they like took some time to stop and help the sheep. I was like, okay, yeah, the sheep was it was wounded. You've helped it out. It's better now. And yeah, so it's just playing with younger people. And people say playing with women. A lot of times you'll get like different or more creative solutions to things like instead of fighting the wargs, how about you feed them and they'll leave you alone or something like that. It's like, oh, well, never thought of a solution like that, instead of going smashing head on. But there's just a million fun D&D moments uh, that everyone, just like everybody else. I have some fun ones. It's more pertinent if you know the adventure or you know the group, and it's more exciting. And I think that's why maybe like the Sajkan story, people would know that because there was, I think there was more unity of play a lot of times because those modules were more. There wasn't as many options out there. Now, just like Netflix, there's a billion different things to watch on Netflix, right? So
much.
right. So you could do an adventure that only 100 of the people have played in the world, right? And so you don't have that sense of that common core where you can share like the giant series. I don't know if you've ever played this, you said you're a new player, but for us old folks, there was stuff like Against the Giants, Descent into the Depths of the Earth, which was the Drow, the Slave Lord series. Those were good. Barrier Peaks, White Plume Mountain.
This is just more of a personal question I have to ask. What was the concept of the Drow? I'm a big Drow
Oh,
fan.
so yeah, so the Drow were neat. I think it was something. So my dad wanted a good villain, and so he thought, okay, well, elves are generally good, right? So why not have a subset of elves that were driven below, like that they had to hide out. They were driven below ground to hide, and just like other creatures, they've evolved over time and changed how they appear. And since they're in this deep, no light place, they have the darker skin, and I think like you notice like maybe he's watching undersea programs when he came up with that one or whatever. You've seen the fish that are way down deep, you
Mm.
know, like the blind fish or whatever, and they're like pale white or whatever. So they have this weird white hair and black, like jet black, like my t-shirt black skin. Uh, and he just wanted them to be different. And they're like terribly evil, right? So it's good to be able to fight them, but they're sneaky and crafty and new. And the women were in charge, which was, just a little twist, so more Amazonian in that sense. The women held the power in there. Uh, but I think probably what appealed to him most is the fact that they had all these great innate abilities and cool magic items. And uh, when you expose them to sunlight, they become worthless. So I told you he was a stingy DM. So I remember I played Otis. Otis was my first character. He was Ranger. I made it, played him up to 10th level, and I went through the Giant series and the Drow series. And I remember how we were so happy that we'd gotten some of this treasure, these cool magic items, because the Drow were really tough. It was a tough fight, and we took them out in the sunlight, and then the next day he told us how they looked kind of shriveled up and not as good, and they didn't have any of their magic powers anymore because if you take them out, it's no good. So I think the Drow were just, hey, what could be a very clever, new, create a sense of mystery and wonder, because you don't know what it is. Who was pulling the strings that made the giants do these things, right? Oh, and you track and you go underground, you're exploring, and you get blindsided by these things. You don't know how to fight them, right? Because they're clever players. And if you throw a troll at them, they're like, oh, yeah, fire, boom, that's how we take care of that, right? They know all this stuff. So if you throw new things at them, or even just variations of an old thing, right? And they don't know how to deal with it, keeps them on their toes. You get that sense of mystery and excitement.
Oh my goodness, I love that. I love Drow. They're
Yeah.
my heart.
And
Um,
Loth is so terrible, right? Yeah.
just horrible.
Yeah.
um, I'm pretty sure you have DM'd probably hundreds of games. Um, what would you say is your biggest pet peeve at the table?
I suppose it's people who on their turn aren't really prepared or aren't really connected. And you're kind of like, they would try to, hey, I want to do this. And you're like, okay, obviously you must have missed an important development. So you have to go back and like spell it through. So just I guess if they're not engaged, that's the thing, because the excitement around the table, we all feed off one another. So that's okay. Or on the opposite side would be the person who wants to hog all the time and not let other people play. So uh, what's nice is when there's a team, and sure, there could be someone who maybe is coming up with making some of the decisions, but everyone is feeding those decisions and they're agreeing that's what they want to do, and everybody gets a chance to shine. So as a DM, you got to kind of do that. Otherwise, most people don't want to come to a game once a week, once a month, whatever the case is, and sit there for 3 or 4 hours and don't feel like they're included or a relevant part of the story, right?
Yeah, no, I can definitely understand that. Do you have anything that you're working on that you'd like to maybe talk a little bit about?
Yeah, I'm always working on stuff. So just like a busy guy. So I'm, in the army full time, and I have my wife and daughters, obviously, which is another full-time job, right? And then I run GaryCon, and you think, oh, that's just a couple days a year, Luke. That's not a big deal. No, you're wrong. It takes planning year round. You got to negotiate contracts with hotels and, get vendors and guests, and oh my goodness, develop merchandise and all this sort of stuff. So it's a year-round process. Um, but I am doing another virtual game event. Looks like I'm going to announce it here shortly. We're going to do something called Autumn Revel, or GaryCon presents Autumn Revel, which is just again something that was from my boyhood. TSR would do a small convention in autumn in Lake Geneva, and it was a lot of fun. It's probably like 100 people or 150 people, pretty small, but it was cool as a little kid. And this will be a virtual gaming event. Why? Just because I figured we aren't meeting in person, we may as well do a virtual convention. And I want to test some ideas I have for how to incorporate uh, virtual vendors a little bit more so, because I think that's something that we can game like this Zoom or whatever you're using. It's actually really good. I was a non-believer prior to the coronavirus, and now I play online and I love it. But I would not touch it with a 10-foot pole uh,
Same.
before. Yeah, I was like, nah, no, I don't want to do that. I was wrong. This is actually fun. It's nice to connect this way. It's a lot more convenient. But one of the aspects that I think we're leaving behind is the vendor, right? These guys are, I'm sure Wizards of the Coast is doing great. Some other larger firms are doing okay because they're the 800-pound gorilla. They're on Amazon, all that sort of stuff. But if you are a small press, or maybe somebody who makes, a dice or whatever the case is, and typically, or an artist, and you typically go to a series of conventions to market and sell your goods, you're hurting. And I'm trying to figure out how can we do that better, and add a couple ideas that hopefully will translate well, um, and help them out, because I'd like to see a strong community once we get out of the coronavirus thing, which hopefully will be next year sometime, or hopefully we'll get a vaccine.
God
Um,
willing.
yeah, God willing, because know this, like I said, this is great, but it still would be nice to be able to see friends and give them a hug, and have a beer together, or whatever the case may be. It's just it's a little bit it's a little nicer, it's a little different feel. It's nice to be able to do that.
Get back
Uh,
to conventions.
get back to convention. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'll stop the virtual gaming stuff just because it's so convenient. I don't have to drive somewhere. I don't, it's just pretty easy, right, to do.
Absolutely.
You can do it you can do it without putting your shoes on. It's great. Uh, and the other thing I probably want to do is really just time management, and nugget it out. Is, gosh, it was about 7, 8 years ago I came up with my idea for my campaign, World of Blighted Lands, after deployment to my last deployment to Iraq. Um, and it's an apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic uh, world, fantasy apocalyptic. But it's there's a desert where it's super hot, and there's weird, magically mutated creatures and stuff like that. But there's ancient relics in there from a powerful lost civilization, right? So people want to go and explore and find it. And there's weird, neat creatures, and culturally it mixes. It's like maybe Turkey would have been in Middle Ages or something. That's like a place where cultures mix,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you're going to see some people who, typically I think we tend to see more of a Western European fantasy realm, right? Kind of like, King Arthur and whatever kind of stuff. Well, it would be nice to see a little bit more Eastern, Asiatic influence or Middle East, but fantasy, right? So just mix it together and give some people something new. So I called it the world of Okarim, and the Blighted Lands is a specific space in that world. And a lot of times just gone by, I realized, well, you know what? There's never going to be a perfect time to do this, but why not get these adventures out into people's hands? I have a few adventures that I do as tournament modules for GaryCon, and I print like 100 or 200 of them. And I would just have the extra ones, leftover ones for sale on my website at GaryCon.com on our bazaar and sell them there. But I hadn't put any in PDF for circulation. And a few people have told me, hey, these are really cool. You've got some great ideas. I would love to see you develop that. So if I can, I think I just need to figure out maybe a writing partner to help me develop this stuff, because it does take a lot of time to develop good campaign material, right? Creating your own campaigns, this is a different thing. So like creating, this I stumbled onto a question here. So if I'm leading you too far afield, you can just tell me to stop.
You are perfectly fine.
So when Dungeons and Dragons was created, the idea was everyone would make up their own world. Like you're the DM, you're like the master of your realm, right? You pick what rules you want. If elves are 4 feet tall in your game, they're 4 feet tall and purple, right? Doesn't matter. It's your world. You want it to work that way. That's how it works. However, I think someone, and it wasn't TSR, it wasn't my dad, someone put out a module, and people bought it. They thought, oh, cool. There's someone else's idea of how to do something, and that idea pretty easily you sell marketing. Aha! I can sell one set of rules books to people, but I can sell lots of adventures to people, right? And it takes a lot of work to make a campaign. So modules, and obviously we're in that dynamic. A lot of people incorporate pre-made modules into their game, along with maybe some homebrew stuff. But doing a homebrew, you just need some notes, and okay, it's in my head. I know where they're going to go, right? And if they take they decide to do this, guess what? You can take this thing you had over here and put it over here. You can't, if you're writing a module for somebody else, and you got to write all the flavor text, and you got to explain that this is the plot, and this is how. It's like a lot of work, man. So it's funny. I mean, the old modules, if you look at some of the old modules, they're like 12 pages long. I remember if I've got some up here. How long is Tomb of Horrors? Let's see, I don't think it's that long. Tomb of Horrors is cool because it had pictures in it, which is one of the first things. I think it's like 12 pages long. Yeah, 12 pages. So the old Tomb of Horrors, 12 pages long. That's it, and that's a classic adventure. And I believe it was the first time that you had artwork that was showed you what was described. So this was Tomb of Horrors is a classic module. It was created in 77 or 78 to be at Origins, to be a tournament module at Origins. And it was meant to challenge the best players and make you think, not just use powers, not be a ROLL player, but you had to be a ROLE role player. You had to describe what was doing, you had to do problem solving and stuff like that. Even Against the Giants and those ones were pretty short. Again, like 12 pages. Is this so here you go. All these old monochrome ones, Against the Giants. I think this is also 12 pages.
That is so cool.
Oh, pages, sorry. This one is 8 pages. That's Against the Giants, 8 pages. With Dave Sutherland art. I remember Dave Sutherland. He's a good dude.
So much has from there to what it is now.
Yeah,
like 300 pages.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, exactly. Now you got giant, like, oh, hey, we're a tyranny of dragons, right? And look at this thing. It's huge. That's not 8 pages, right? So that takes a little bit more work. If you're doing 8 pages of this is what's in the room, you give them a paragraph. The Baron needs you to go check this out. There's something mysterious happening on the borderline. His patrol can come back. Go find him. Oh, hey, there you go. Okay, great. We're going to go do that. And then you start the adventure, and just it's encounters and a couple lines of this is what's going on, working into your campaign however you need to. So you had to make up more. on your own. Uh, but I
That's
think it's
that's
a
so
natural
cool.
progression. Yeah, Rob Kuntz, who was one of the earliest players or earliest playtesters. He's like 14 when my dad wrote D&D and he helped playtest it. He's a local neighborhood kid. He is one of these adamantly sticks to the there should be no modules kind of guys, which is okay.
Hey,
Yeah,
if that's how everyone, that's how they want, right?
yeah. He thinks if you're if you want the purest form of role playing, you are going to make your own stuff up, and your world is going to be totally customized to your experience, and that's what makes the group neat. So, okay, that's one way. Other people, like Adventures League, want it all to be kind of the same, so you can share stories and see how, oh, this is how we did it, and this is how fast we did it. So, yeah,
Um, Luke, do you have any advice for new DMs? As you know firsthand,
yeah,
you pick up a book and it's intimidating when you
it
first
is.
get it. I know I
I
was incredibly intimidated when I first looked at the DMG.
Yeah, I never read them. So just so you know, I never read any D&D book all the way through. You don't need to. So you can just kind of watch the game, play, learn as you go. Sure, you're going to refer to specific parts as you need them. You may be the type of person who wants to read the entire thing. That's great. That's right. I would say be comfortable, feel comfortable before you decide to start as a DM. Know the basics, know how combat works, know how spells work, have an idea of like what your story might be. It's okay to use a module to guide you, and you're going to be nervous. That's totally normal. I'm still nervous when I DM today. I still get butterflies before a big game because I want people to have fun. I don't want to make a mistake. The same as anybody else. There's no DM gene that's in my family or something that uniquely makes us a better dungeon master. I do terrible voices. I listen to like Matt Mercer or something like that. I'm like, oh my god, I can't do anything like that. That guy's amazing. But you find your own style, and it could be an amalgamation of other people's styles. See, you got this wonderful benefit of Twitch or YouTube or whatever it is, where you can watch lots of different DM styles, and you can pick and pull some of the things that you like and try to incorporate them and kind of mimic them, and that will become your style, I think, and you'll find this comfortable place after you've done it a few times. And just think about the first time you rode a bicycle, you probably didn't do such a great job, right? But now you jump on a bicycle and off you go. Or you did your times tables, you're probably getting all the math wrong. Now you don't even think about it. Boom. Same thing like anything else. You don't have to be great to start, but you do have to start to be great. So just dive in, have fun. If you make a mistake, the players probably won't even notice. Just go with it.
Thank you so much for the insight, and I hope that helps you guys at home. Um, Luke, are you up for a few games?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. The first one, I'm gonna put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Um, I need you to stat yourself, your in real life
Oh,
stats, and a class.
well, I'd say wisdom is my dump stat, so that's probably my 17. The rest are probably 18 and above. Charisma is obviously my highest stat. So, no. Boy, statting myself, that is terrible. That's so mean. Uh, okay, so especially because like 49-year-old Luke is different than younger Luke. So, I would say that strength is probably fairly typical, maybe like a 10. I've lost a little strength over the last few years with some injuries. So that's in the old DMG and the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons DMG. When you look it up, when you're my age, you start losing con and strength points. It's true, it happens.
No.
Yeah, intelligence is good. I think I have a solid intelligence above average, maybe 12 or 13. Constitution, yeah, I don't get sick very often. So again, high average. I don't think I'm getting any bonus hit points or anything like crazy like that. So maybe 13, 13, something in that area. Dexterity, that's not a good one. I'm probably a 9. I might have or an 8. I might have like a -1. Not such a great dex. And charisma, I actually do get along with people pretty well, and people seem to want to or follow me well, or I tend to do pretty decent in that regard. So I don't know, 14, 15, maybe something like that. I think a little higher than average in that area.
I'd give it a solid 17.
Oh, thank you. See, that's very sweet.
And what would your class be?
Probably a fighter. Yeah, I mean, Boy, but if I could throw magic spells, that'd be awesome. That would be pretty cool. How awesome would that be? Or, geez, I mean, think about it. What a different world that would be in. And I guess that's why it's so much fun to play, right? Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, because if you could pray to gods and be given, powers, divine powers, how reassuring would that be, right? Because instead of a great
Here,
mystery, it'd be like, this is
you
what's
get
going on.
you get some
Yeah,
smite.
yeah, right. Or paladin or something cool like that. You know, rogues who could, do all these wonderful acrobatic events and hide so easily. I mean, there's so much neat stuff. But yeah, I think probably just based on real life, I might be more of a fighter type.
I think that that fits quite well. A fighter with a great charisma.
There you go. So yeah, maybe I'm that paladin after all, right? So there you go. I could be a paladin.
Are
Actually,
you,
some people called me a paladin, to be honest with you. They're like, you're such a good guy. You're like stand-up guy. I'm like, well, you don't know me that well, apparently. You call me a paladin, but I've got my flaws. But yeah, heck yeah, I'd take being a paladin. That'd be cool.
are you up for a little bit of this or that?
Okay, sure.
Modify memory or mass suggestion?
Mass suggestion.
Okay. Paladin or warlock?
Paladin all the way. Yeah, much more. I like good characters more so than evil characters.
Waterdeep or Neverwinter?
I don't know Neverwinter at all, so I'll say Waterdeep.
Okay. Homebrew or store bought?
I would say homebrew. Homebrew's cool. But if I make it, then you should buy it. So store
Yes.
bought.
Sage background or Outlander?
Outlander. Yeah.
Stick to the rules or rule of cool?
No, rule's cool. You gotta make it. You gotta make it fit.
Yeah. Flute or lute?
Lute, totally. Not a flautist. Gotta play the rock guitar, right? Yeah, Guitar Hero.
Standard array or 46 and drop the lowest?
46 and drop the lowest. Yeah, standard array. I hate that. Yeah, I want to
Yes,
roll. I want to roll the dice.
I do too. Yes. When my DMs are like, okay, just do standard array, no, or point by,
Yeah,
no.
yeah. That's only if you're like doing a tournament or something where you gotta. Okay, we gotta keep it all the same, and then okay, I get it. But no,
I'm with you, Luke. Um, Great weapon master or sharpshooter?
great weapon master because, yeah, more hand-to-hand combat. I'm not a stay in the back shoot 'em kind of guy.
Drist or Jarlaxle?
Drizzt is cooler. Yeah.
Last one, dungeon or dragon?
You know, dragons are great, but I think there's so much more variability that you can work into your various dungeon scenarios and stuff. So I'm gonna go with dungeon.
I mean, who says that there can't be a dragon in that dungeon?
There was drag dungeons before, and before we really thought about how they would get in there and get out, or what they would eat. So, as a kid, yeah, there was just lots of dragons and giant creatures in the dungeon. You're like, what are they doing in here? They're waiting for adventures, of course, so they can attack them. What else? Yeah.
Before we get to our last question of the interview, one, thank you again so much for being a part of this interview here at We. Are you sure you want to do that? We appreciate you so much.
My pleasure.
Um, I would love for you to plug any of your stuff, any of your socials. How can our adventurers come find you and come see all the cool stuff that you have?
Well, right. My social media is pretty easy. There's not too many Gygaxes out there, so I am at Luke Gygax on Instagram. Facebook, I'm not sure. I think it's just / Luke Gygax at the end. And if I don't add you as a friend, it's not because I'm a snob. I just have 5,000 friends already, and that's the max. Twitter is at Luke Gygax. I run GaryCon. If you want to find out about GaryCon, you can find GaryCon at gary.con on Instagram. GaryCon is on Facebook as well. And we have a website, GaryCon.com, that you can peruse and see what's going on. So that's it.
Perfect. And we'll also put all of that in the description box below so you guys can go straight to it after this interview. Um, I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to put you on the spot one more time for our last question. I need you to make a quick adventuring hook. As DMs, we are always making stuff up on the top of our heads, right?
Hmm.
When that rogue decides to go left. Uh, can you give our adventurers a quick adventuring hook to send them on their way, either to their glory or to their doom?
Oh, sure. Sure. So I actually used this one just recently, just off the top of my head. They're in the city of Greyhawk, and the rogue, the thief, had run into a fellow thief or rogue type at a bar, and they had some drinks and played some dice, some cards, and talked. And the thief came back to the party and said, "Oh, I met someone who may have a job for us and wants to meet us." And they went to a renowned slumlord in the outs of Greyhawk, and these are a good party. And this man, think of Mr. Burns or Lo Pan from Big Trouble in Little China. He's that old. He's in a chair. He's a withered little creature, and he said, "I need you to find a book, a tome deep beneath Greyhawk on the fifth level, in a room guarded by a powerful undead creature, and I will pay you 50,000 gold pieces to bring this to me, but it must be brought, within immediately. Time is not on my side." And the man that was with him, guides them down into the adventure, and boom, there they are. And what you do with that book you could do all sorts of fun stuff with that book. Of course, it could be a lich, it could be a mummy, it could be a whatever it is that you want in that tomb, and they could open the book and they could read into it. You, so whatever you want to do. So that gives you a little bit of time to take them on a couple little random encounters. Boom, you set up the room, and then you get time to think in the back of your head, what is that book going to be? Are they going to open the book? Are they going to get, you know, is it going to be how to become a lich, right? And do they need to destroy that book because they're good? Are they going to open it and it's how to make a potion of longevity, or maybe it's a way to steal souls from children to power an evil machine that keeps you young, or what is it that you're going to do with this book, or maybe it's not even related to his age, it's something else. So, but there you go. So that's like, if you just need a little off the top of your head, you can use that one.
What would you do, adventures, with that hook? Again, thank you so much. And you wonderful players at home, I hope you guys enjoyed this interview. Jesus knows I have. We will see you guys next week. Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye.